Thank you so much. It's really wonderful to be here with all of you. In playing a role of building brands at Google is something that's extremely exciting for me. And I think when I think about all of you in the room and I think about the opportunity from an export perspective, building brand awareness and really understanding how you can educate and inform consumers at a very local level in the markets you're trying to reach is critically important. And I think here at Google, historically, we've spent a lot of time talking with all of you about very lower funnel metrics in terms of how you can optimize your search campaigns to really help you reach customers at a very local level via search. So I'm super thrilled to be here today to talk to you a little bit about some of the upper funnel metrics and how Google can really help you reach consumers and raise awareness of your brand and really introduce your brand into new markets that you're considering entering. So before I start, I'll tell you a little bit why I care so much about this. So this used to be my backyard. I was raised and grew up in sunny Southern California, and this is basically where I lived and went every day. And to me, being a Californian, as you guys probably know, brands are critically important to who we are and how we think about our life and actually how we identify ourselves and how we think about others around us. So before I left and moved to Paris, which is where I now live, this is how I viewed my life. I viewed my life through the brands that I encountered on a daily basis. So places like SoulCycle, which is a very trendy spinning gym that everyone loves in California, Whole Foods Market, Uber, Fred Segal is a high-end department store. All of these brands really defined who I am as a person. And it's very easy to understand others in a very snapshot, superficial, I grant you, but very simple way to understand and orient where you are and who you are and how you relate to the world around you. So as I mentioned, almost 2 years ago, I moved my entire family with my husband and 2 very young boys to Paris. And this is now the life we live. I had never been to France really before. It was a great opportunity for me and my family. I don't speak any French, and I'd only been a complete tourist. In fact, I'd never really lived abroad. I'd been a very American, very US-centric point of view in everything I did in life. And these are the brands I had to learn and understand and determine which of these brands is still important for me. And I vividly remember about a month after I moved to Paris, I called my mom in absolute frustration that all of our clothes had turned completely gray. And I called my mom and I said, it's unbelievable. The laundry system in France is so horrendous. We have this terrible washing machine. We don't have a dryer. Everyone has these clotheslines. It's a first world country in theory, but we can't get laundry. And more importantly, everything is turning gray, and they don't sell bleach here. And my mom said, how is that possible? I mean, they must sell bleach. And I said, I have looked up and down the aisles. I can't find Clorox anywhere. And I just went along with our gray clothes. And about a month later, I was complaining with some of my French colleagues in the office saying, I can't believe you guys don't use bleach. Why don't you use it? And they said, well, of course we do. You just need to buy La Croix. And I said, La Croix. That's what all those aisles are when I go to the grocery store. But for me, not understanding that all I knew was Clorox. Clorox was the brand every American that I know of at least uses Clorox. I don't know that there is another bleach brand in the US, though I'm sure there is one. But branding is critically important, and making sure that people understand your brand at a very local level is critically important, and making sure you're targeting the right person. I'm a mom with 2 young boys. I clearly need bleach. They need to ensure that their message is getting to me at the right time in the right place, and that I understand that there is a product in the market that I critically need that I should be able to go to the store and purchase. So I love the story of Airbnb, because Airbnb is a brand who has done an exceptional job of using digital to convey their brand to people at a global scale. So I want to show you the first video that they created in 2011 when they were first launching their business. They used video and the power of sight, sound, and motion to clearly explain their product to make sure that people understood what they were all about. What Airbnb was doing at the time was completely revolutionary. They were trying to make booking a home or an apartment or even an individual room in a house as simple as it is to book a hotel. In 2011, that was a completely foreign concept and one that most people probably would have said that is a terrible idea. But the way in which they marketed the brand and the way in which they conveyed that idea to consumers globally has made them into a phenomenal success. So let me show you the first video that they created.
This place isn't mine, but I'm staying here for the weekend. It's not a hotel, and I had never met my host before yesterday. So how did I end up here? I booked it on Airbnb. Once I knew I was coming to this city, I took just a quick search on Airbnb to find what I was looking for. A clean, comfortable, affordable place to stay. There's a wide variety of listings, and searching is really easy. Just enter your dates and browse through pictures of available places. It's free to list, so people all over the world are posting their places, making the possibilities endless. Guillermo rents out his extra bedroom to help pay for rent. And cat food. Before you book anything, you can read reviews left by previous guests and hear all about their experiences. If you have any questions, you can message the host directly through Airbnb. When you're ready to book, you just put in your request. Airbnb holds on to your payment until 24 hours after you've checked in. After your stay, both guests and hosts can leave reviews for each other. It's a great way to share your experiences with the community and to help everybody find the perfect fit. You can stay a night, a week, or a month if you want, at any price point. You can stay in a private room in a place with other people, or you can stay in a home by yourself. These people are out of town for the weekend, so I get the whole place to myself. When I'm out of town, I put my place on Airbnb. It helps me pay for all my adventures and lets me treat myself to something special once in a while. And with so many unique places available all over the world, why wouldn't I? Plus, I can book from anywhere. Airbnb lets guests and hosts choose the experience they want. And on top of it all, you're saving money. And a great Airbnb experience is so effortless that the only thing left to worry about is where to go next.
So they did three really key, simple things. They explained the product in a very accessible way. They reached their target audience, travelers, at a global level. And most importantly, they gave consumers the choice to actually lean in and choose to watch what is about a 2-minute video, but it really explains what their product is and how it's doing. And as a result, Airbnb was named as the Inc. magazine's Company of the Year last year. How many of you have ever booked a room with Airbnb? A lot. Wow. Maybe 60, 70% of the people in this room. So you all understand the power of Airbnb. What's amazing is that today, 20 million people have booked with Airbnb. And in 2014 alone, that was 10 million people. They have over 800,000 listings right now as of last year, which means they have more listings than Hilton Hotels or the Intercontinental Hotel Group or really any hotel group worldwide. So they have completely transformed the entire industry, and they really did so through using the power of digital and video to educate consumers at a global level. So what I'm going to talk with you a little bit about today is how you can inform your global marketing teams and how you as a global company can really think local. And you need to do this because it's critically important to first find your local customer. And once you find that local customer, you need to tell great stories that really strike an emotional chord with that consumer. And then once you've hooked them with that emotional chord, you need to continue to build stronger relationships on an ongoing basis to ensure that they continue to remember your brand and consider your brand at that critical moment when they're choosing to make a purchase. So first, when we think about finding your local customer, as I mentioned, I'm an expat living in France. And for me, introductions are always incredibly awkward. I'm used to an American handshake. But every business meeting I go to is extremely awkward because I never know, is it a kiss on the cheek? Is it a handshake? And my role actually covers EMEA. So I go to markets across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, and there it gets even more confusing. Is it 2 or 3 kisses? Is it left, right, or right, left, right? Or in some of my markets, actually even being a woman and giving a handshake is completely unacceptable. I encourage you to think about this when you're thinking about your brand. How do you introduce your brand to a new market? You need to make sure that the way in which you introduce your brand to a new market is culturally sensitive and makes sense and is appropriate at the given moment with the given person that you're interacting with. Because as we all know, interactions with people, even in the same office, can be very different based on their background and who they are. So I would encourage you to think about 3 things when you're thinking about introducing your brand to a new market. The first is obviously language. We have a great number of tools, some of which Gary showed you earlier, around how we can help you simply translate the language. But it's critically important to make sure that the language and the words that you are using make sense to a customer in the context in which you want them to make sense. And the second is culture. Even if they understand technically what that word may mean as defined by a dictionary or as defined by what Google Translate may mean it to be, you also need to make sure that it's culturally relevant. And third, and I think most important, is you need to recognize that consumers today have the option of choice. It is no longer the day in which we put our message out there through TV or print. People sit and absorb and listen. Consumers today are very distracted. They're looking at multiple devices, and they have the option to completely ignore your brand. So you need to make sure that you're presenting your brand in a way that's engaging enough that it gives people the opportunity to choose to listen, to choose to not be interrupted by everything else that's on the screen at that given moment in time or everything else that's going on around them, and actually listen and absorb your message and engage with your brand. But brand marketing, at the end of the day, is quite complicated. It's not nearly as simple as other forms of marketing that we may have on a digital perspective. But at the end of the day, it's actually quite simple. You need to make sure that people see your brand. They need to make sure that they remember your brand. And you need to make sure that when the time comes, they ultimately take action. And along the way of this journey from seeing to remembering to taking action, you need to be measuring and optimizing along the way to ensure that what you are doing is efficient for your company as you grow in new markets. And this is truly where the power of digital lies. The ability to optimize in real time and have the flexibility to test and iterate over and over and over again, particularly when you're going to a new market where you do not have a physical presence and you aren't there to see in real time whether or not people are buying your product. It's critically important to make sure that you are able to test and optimize, and this is truly where digital can help you, both online and ultimately it can inform the way in which you're marketing in your offline decisions as well. And as I mentioned before, choice is critically important. Consumers are continually having the option with multiple devices to swipe, to tap, to screen, to scroll, to completely ignore what it is you're doing. And ultimately, your brand message needs to give your customers an invitation to connect. You need to find a way to engage with them at a deeper level so that when the time comes, when they have seen your brand and when they've remembered your brand, that they actually have engaged with you in a meaningful way, that they take the next and most important decision to actually take action with your brand at that critical moment in time. So I'm going to show you a video here because I think this is just a very comical video to me. And I think it proves a really important point that it's not just about demo and geo, which is historically the way that we've thought about brand marketing. And we need to recognize that even once you find your local customer, there is not a one-size-fits-all for these customers. A female 25 to 34 is very different in different markets, but also very different based on their life state, the brands they care about, what they're interested in, what they want to do that night. And it's critically important to realize this. I'll show you an ad. This is Lindsay Lohan, who I think probably most of you know. But Lindsay Lohan is an old Disney star who's had a tragic recent history with many car accidents. And Esurance recognized that it's critically important to understand that it's not just about demo and geo, even in the way in which they're crafting their insurance products. So this is an ad that they put in the Super Bowl a couple weeks ago.
Your mom's a terrible driver.
Get in. That's not my mom. Hey, I'm sorry to your mom. We're both 25 to 35 years old. We're both women on the go, and we both clocked a lot of miles. Believe me. Whatever, I'm out of here.
Sorta you isn't you. Only eSurance has coverage my way. It helps make sure you only pay for what's right for you, not someone sorta like you. That's insurance for the modern world. eSurance, backed by Allstate.
So I just think that's a funny ad. It did very well at the Super Bowl. But I think it proves a really important point, right? Historically, we've thought about marketing, female 25 to 35, everyone gets the same ad. But the power of digital is that you can actually give very tailored and very custom ads to the individuals. And by using digital, we can actually help you find in-market consumers who are looking to buy your product in a very given market. We can help you find lookalike customers. We can really help you down to a very micro level understand who are the consumers in your markets and make sure that the message that you're creating is reaching the right customer at the right time so that you're not wasting your media dollars. You don't want to send a message to a woman 25 to 34 with 2 kids that you would send to someone who's single going to a bar at night. You need to make sure that you're optimizing the messages that you're sending and are being received by the right people to make sure that ultimately you're gaining effective efficiency. So now that I've shared a few tips on how you can really how you can really find your local customer, once you find those individuals, it's critically important that you tell them great stories. At the end of the day, marketing is both a science and an art. And everything about finding your local customer is really about the science behind marketing. And this is where Google has plenty of tools, many of which you guys already know and will learn about over the next 2 days, where we can really help you find the right consumers. But really important is once you find those consumers is making sure that you're telling them really great stories. So I'd love to spend a few minutes talking about some great stories that we've told and that others are telling in the brand world today, really taking advantage of the digital platform. In the end of the day, the role of storytelling hasn't changed. Storytelling has always been the critical element of advertising and building a brand in a new market. But while storytelling and the core essence of storytelling hasn't changed, the way in which we are able to tell our stories has changed dramatically, and in my opinion, it has changed dramatically for the better. We used to be held to a 15 or a 30-second spot on television or a very simple print ad. But now, with the way in which you can create online video, the way in which you don't pay after the first 30 seconds, you can have endless time to tell your story. And when we look at the winners of last year's Cannes Awards, every single winner, the ad length of the campaigns was over 2 minutes. So the way in which brands are telling stories today has completely changed. We used to advise that you should never create a video that's longer than 15, 20 seconds because people won't watch any longer than that. But the reality is now we see consumers actually seeking out this content. And for the truly great storytelling brands, we see them gaining massive market share and tremendous brand awareness because they're telling stories that really connect with people. And at the end of the day, these stories should do one of 3 key things. They need to educate, they need to entertain, or they need to inspire. Because people watch video for the very same reasons that they come online. They either watch a video because they're looking for an answer to a very specific question. People typically go to google.com to have a question answered, and the second largest search engine is youtube.com. So people go to Google, and if they don't find the answer they're looking for, or they find the answer in the format that they don't like, they come to YouTube to find their question answered. A great example is the whole site around how to tie a tie. If you want to tie a Windsor knot as a man, it's actually quite hard to go to Google, look up how do I tie a Windsor knot, and then try to read the text while looking in the mirror, going back and forth to tie this tie. But if you go to youtube.com and you find the video of how to tie a Windsor knot, it's perfect. It plays while you're in the bathroom, and you can just see and watch while you're actually tying the tie. And there's many other questions that people are asking that are actually better answered via video. And consumers know this, and they're going to YouTube and other video platforms to have these questions answered. And for these people, you need to create content that is educational. The Airbnb video that we showed is a perfect example of educational content. How-to content, FAQs, all of this type of content, these questions that people are asking that you can find through Google search trends, can be answered via video and often in a way that makes more sense and better relates to customers. The second big category is entertainment, and this is actually the most popular category that we see brands creating content around. Is how do you truly entertain consumers? Because people either are online because they're looking for an answer, or they're coming in a very lean back mode at the end of the day, or they want a break, or they're sitting on the train, or they're waiting for a bus, and they just want to be entertained or inspired. Turkish Airlines, which I will show you in a minute, has done some terrific work around entertaining content. And the inspiring pieces of content are those that really strike an emotional chord. They're what get people to really remember your brand. They're what get people excited to be evangelists for your brands. They're the pieces of content that brands are creating that cause the viral sensations that we see, like the Dove Sketches campaign or the Jean-Claude Van Damme Volvo campaign. These are truly inspirational pieces of content that have had tremendous impact for their brands. So I mentioned Turkish Airlines. In 2013, Turkish Airlines created a tremendous campaign. They hired 2 celebrity football stars, or sports stars, Kobe Bryant and Lionel Messi. And they had these 2 individuals fly around the world to everywhere that Turkish Airlines flies, and they took selfies of themselves. And essentially, the core of the campaign is that they had 2 individuals visit every country, and they broadcast this campaign to all of the countries where Turkish Airlines flies and many others, really showcasing the beauty and the locations that you could travel to with Turkish Airlines. This quickly became one of the fastest growing campaigns, and they generated over 77 million views in the first week that the campaign was live. But what's even more impressive is that this campaign had a dramatic increase on both search volume on YouTube and on Google. So they saw a 209% increase of searches for their brand or for the ad campaign on YouTube during and after the campaign, and also on Google search. They saw a significant impact in terms of the awareness of their brand and people searching to learn more about Turkish Airlines as a result of this campaign. So this is what Airbnb just recently launched. This is an ad that Airbnb put out last year. So I want to show you this ad, and then I'll show you a couple other iterations that they've done with this.
Look out at the world. Isn't it wonderful? And see all the places we call home. Hand-built hideaways, castles in the clouds, and bungalows with a beach out back. On Airbnb.com, you can book and stay in any one you like, all for a price that suits you. It's simple. Just enter where you want to go, the dates you want to be there, and choose from thousands of places. Then decide between a room or having the whole Airbnb home to yourself. Before you travel, you can chat with your host, so you're not meeting a stranger, and you can leave reviews for each other after your stay. Make yourself at home, wherever you go. Belong anywhere with Airbnb.
So you can see 2 years later, their approach to creating their video and their advertising is still very consistent to when they first launched. But what they've done now is they've taken their core campaign and they've now started running this in all countries where they're popular or where they're trying to build brand awareness. So here's an example that they're running in China.
世界咁大，有數唔完嘅精彩，美好嘅家園遍佈每個角落，人手打造嘅隱世莊園。
So you can see it's the exact same ad, right? They had one piece of creative, and they've just dubbed over this piece of creative but with a different language. And what's really important here is that they found a piece of creative that they believed would be culturally relevant in every market where they wanted to advertise. So it was a function of creating one piece of creative and then dubbing over it that's enabled them to continue to expand their global presence. So they've now created the same campaign in 12 different languages. And what YouTube will do when you go online is that it knows who you are as a consumer. And it will serve you the right language and the right geography and the right ad based on who you are and when you're watching. So this has been a really clever way that Airbnb has been able to create one piece of creative, but have it have really global resonance in different markets based on simply changing the language. So another great example is what Puma has done, and they've taken a different approach. So this goes back to a campaign that Puma ran in 2010. And this is a really great campaign. They basically found a bunch of football stars, football fanatics, called the Hooligans. And in advance of Valentine's Day, they asked this group of football fanatics to sing love songs that people could share on Valentine's Day with their loved ones. So here's the original ad that Puma created.
I'll be your dream, I'll be your wish, I'll be your fantasy.
I'll be your rope, I'll be your love, be everything that you need.
I love you more with every breath, truly, madly, deeply do. I will be strong, I will be faithful, cause I'm counting on a new beginning, a reason for living, a deeper meaning. I wanna stand with you on a mountain. I wanna bathe with you in the sea. I wanna lay like this forever until the sky falls down on me.
So as you can imagine, that became a huge viral sensation on Valentine's Day. Women around the world were receiving this ad from Puma. But Puma caught on that this was actually a tremendously successful ad. So they started to replicate this concept in different markets. So this is what they did in Germany.
Sing mit mir ein kleines Lied.
Wie eine Blume am Winter beginnt und so wie ein Feuer im eisigen Wind. Wie eine
So you get the idea, right? They took the same concept that had worked so well in one market and then replicated that concept with different people, different actors, et cetera, in a new market. And it was tremendously successful, and they rolled it out in France and Italy and other markets. And it became a global marketing campaign all around this core concept of getting football fanatics to sing love songs. And it was a huge success for Puma. So as you can see, there's many different approaches for how you should think about building your brand in different markets. You take an example like Turkish Airlines. They made one piece of creative, they kept it in one language, and they scaled that globally. And they reached 77 million viewers and had a massive impact on search. The second is what we saw with Airbnb. So they made one piece of creative that they felt was culturally relevant at a global level, and they had a voiceover to basically have different languages. And then the third is that there was one concept, which we saw with Puma, of basically getting fanatics to sing together. And then they rolled that concept out on a market-by-market basis to make sure it was culturally relevant in each of those different markets. So there's many different approaches, and none of these are right or wrong. It's really about finding what is the right approach for your brand to make sure that it will make sense in the markets that you're pursuing and the markets where you already exist to really build that memorable connection with your customers. So once you've found your local customer using all the data and science that we have to help you do so, and once you've told really great stories through the power of sight, sound, and motion with video, you really need to think about how do you build and foster a long-term relationship with those consumers. And so brands have started doing some really exciting things in this area recently. So the first example I'm going to show you is Burberry. Burberry has been a fantastic brand building an amazing global presence. And one of the things that Burberry has done is they've really thought about how do we create these amazing hero pieces of content that we see through some interactive apps that they've created and some really beautiful film and movie type of content that they've created. But what they've also really started doing is thinking about how do we actually take a lot of the amazing content that we generate through our fashion shows and actually make it accessible to a global audience who's curious to see this. So I'll play you the video that they've created as a compilation of their fashion show. Oh, sorry.
We lived through scars this time, but I made up my mind. We can't leave us behind anymore. We'll have to part for now. Next time, there's no doubt, 'cause I can't go without you anymore. We live through scars this time. I made up my mind. No, we can't leave us behind.
So what you can see they did there is they used a new product called info cards. And basically what info cards enable you to do is have interactive shopping through a video experience. And so what Burberry was able to do is they were able to take all of the great content that they were already creating as part of their fashion shows, and then add in the info cards as a layer on top of that content, so that as consumers globally were watching the recaps of those fashion shows, they could actually shop the looks in real time. Those info cards are clickable as you're watching the ad or watching the video or the content, and take you directly to the site where you can shop and purchase. So it's one of the ways in which we're starting to make brand marketing truly actionable, where you're not just experiencing the brand through a visual experience, but you're actually then engaging with the customer and driving them down the funnel, ultimately into purchase. So the next example I want to show you is with Nespresso. So Nespresso has done also an incredible job of building a global brand. They've had many different campaigns, and what I love about this is that they used a new product called sequential storytelling. And ultimately, one of the core messages that Nespresso is trying to share today is about the sustainability of the product that they create. And they really want to educate consumers on the fact that they make delicious coffee, but more importantly, that that coffee comes from a place where they grow the beans that has a sustainable impact on the world. So they also, though, recognize that it's very challenging to get people to immediately engage with a sustainable message. So they decided to first start with the TVC that they created with George Clooney and Matt Damon, which was their standard television ad. And they took that television ad and they put it online. And they then used and created a variety of different remarketing lists. And they used remarketing lists based on who watched the ad, who shared the ad, who engaged with the ad, who watched part but not all of the ad. And they built a whole variety of different remarketing lists based on what they were seeing. And they then used the power of sequential storytelling, which is very similar to a standard remarketing product you may be using with display. But you can now do with video to create very customized, tailored video messages to move people down the funnel from just the George Clooney high-level fun TVC they were running on TV, down the funnel into the core message around sustainability that they really wanted people to focus on. The campaign was phenomenally successful, far more than the Nespresso team expected. And in the end, they had over 51 million views in the first few weeks. But what was more interesting for them is that they expected, of the total views, that only 10% of the people would actually make it all the way down the funnel to view the sustainability message. But in the end, it was 20% of all of the views of the campaign actually came from the sustainable video. So people had first watched the first, and then the second, and ultimately the third to watch the story about sustainability. And beyond having 20% of the people actually watching the sustainable message that the brand wanted to put out into the market, this had a significant impact on search. And they saw a 31% increase in search volume on Google.com as it related to this campaign at the time that the campaign was running. So overall, Nespresso was able to reach a global audience. They ran this campaign in 14 different markets at the same time. They were able to do all of this through one simple platform. They never would have been able to do this with television. They never would have been able to create all of these different units and understand who actually watched and who would care about this. They didn't even create the sustainable message for television because they felt like it wouldn't be an effective use of their media dollars. But it was a message they really wanted to tell. And it was through video that they were able to find the customers who cared about Nespresso, who cared about their brand, who wanted to engage and then re-engage to really learn more about the brand and who they are. Another great example is this is something that Mango has been doing. And this is another way that they've been using the platform to really test and iterate. So Mango, as you guys probably know, is a global brand that develops fashion. And they do it on a very fast cycle. And they're constantly coming out with new fashion lines. The challenge I have is understanding which fashion resonates in new markets, and more importantly, which models resonate with consumers in those different markets. It's much easier and faster and actually less expensive to test and iterate through online. So before Mango does any type of broad-scale print or offline campaign in new markets, they first test the visual and the creative via video. And they run a variety of different models and a variety of different looks to understand, as you can see here, is it actually more relevant culturally and drive more engagement from our consumers to have a woman casually sitting back in a car or being in a more dominant position on top of that car? Which is going to drive more engagement with our customers? And they run this online a few weeks prior to actually deciding how they will do their offline marketing in different markets. So they can understand that in Italy, one approach will work. In Spain, it should be different. In the UK, it should be different. Because they understand that there are very unique cultural sensitivities and the way in which people want to see. Does some culture like a stick-thin model, or do they want a more robust model? All of these different nuances are critically important for them. And being able to test online first and iterate and understand what works and what doesn't work helps them tremendously as they then go to do their massive offline print campaigns. The last example I'll show here is from Mondelez. Mondelez is a big snacking brand. They own Oreo and a bunch of other snack brands. And they wanted to launch a new chewing gum under the Trident brand in Brazil. And before launching, they wanted to understand what type of creative will resonate with the market. So they ran these two ad copies for the exact same product. You can play the video, please.
Do futuro, você só tem uma certeza. Que o seu novo Trident ainda vai estar com sabor. Chegou o Trident Unlimited, sabor que dura muito, muito, muito mais.
Acesse duramuitomais.com e faça vídeo seu igual a esse.
So you can see they're essentially the same creative. That's a famous model in Brazil that they had do this ad campaign. But the core difference is that in the first video, the one on the left, you saw the man actually put the gum in his mouth to start the video. And the one on the right, the video started with him already chewing the gum. They then used brand lift surveys, which is a new product that we've launched across many of our markets, to test which of these campaigns actually is more effective. Which one is driving higher click-through rates, higher view rates, and higher engagement rates. And in the end, the one on the left, where the man first puts the gum in his mouth, was tremendously more successful in terms of brand lift and brand awareness than the one with the man chewing at the start of the video. Had they not done this test to start, they wouldn't have known. So they ultimately ran the campaign for a week, they ran a brand lift survey, and they put all their media dollars in the one that they knew was significantly more effective. But then what's interesting is that what works in Brazil doesn't necessarily work in every market. Some markets may not want to see someone chewing gum at all. Some may prefer the one where they start without. So now they're able to do this in multiple markets, and as you think about creating creative, it's so easy for you now to create the creative, run it for a week or two, and get instantaneous results on which is working better, and then optimize and put your media dollars against the one that you know to be most effective. Because in the end, as you see from these last two examples, what we're really trying to do from a branding perspective at Google is ensure that our products enable our brand offerings on YouTube and display and other types of brand products that we're creating to be as measurable as search. The biggest challenge we've always had as brand marketers is a lot of it's emotional. A lot of it's gut feel, a lot of it's quality of creative. People look for viral sensations. It's very hard to actually quantify brand marketing in many ways. And increasingly, we are building more and more tools and products that your account teams can tell you about that actually help you understand, who saw you, who is thinking about you, who wants to purchase. And we've developed a number of our own tools, and we've also partnered with a number of third parties so that we can actually help you understand when you run a campaign, what was the brand lift, what was the brand awareness, what was the sales lift, and ultimately, even in some markets and some areas, we can help you understand, did this brand campaign actually result in purchases for you? So this is one of the areas that I'm most excited about. That being a brand marketer, it's always been hard to know, am I spending my money in the right way? Am I reaching the right customers? Am I going to the right market at the right time? And we now, with new tools, are able to help you really understand this better and build your marketing campaigns accordingly. So in the end, I really hope when you go back to your offices and you go back and talk with your global marketing teams, you'll feel like you have a better sense of how you can really help your teams really understand how to think local. Because it's critically important for you to put yourselves in the shoes of the local customers and think about who they are and how they want to be spoken to. And what is the best way that you can introduce your brand to those consumers to make sure that they first see your brand, but they also remember and eventually take action. Because it's critically important that you first find those local consumers and you drive awareness for your brand. We can work with you on search all day long, but if people don't know about your brand in a new market, or they aren't aware of your brand, as I was not aware of La Croix, it will not be beneficial to you to be optimizing search. And once you find those local customers, you need to be sure you're telling them truly great stories that really strike an emotional chord that make people remember you and make people want to engage with you. And then once you do so, it's critically important to build and foster these long-term relationships with truly engaging experiences. And these engaging experiences don't need to be complicated. As we saw, there's a number of different ways that you can do this, and very simple creative, very simple types of marketing tactics can really help you expand and build your business in new markets. So I wish you all the best of luck with this. I know it's a huge challenge to build brands in new markets and make sure that people remember you and take action. But I trust you all have great information. You have great account teams who are here to help you. So please reach out to them. I'll be around the rest of the day as well. Happy to chat with you more about this. But thank you so much for your time.